and welcome to the NSO update here at the Dev Days. Today I will talk about NSO, what we've done lately, what we're doing pretty soon, and in the future. That being said, I will actually start to talk about a little bit how the market have evolved and having a historical view of what we have been automating. So I'll use the mobile world as an example, and we start off with a 3G rollout. At that time, the network were typically co-located, built upon physical devices using dedicated infrastructure. Also, the service definitions were pretty static, with turn-up times in years, and changes took at least months. Moving on to 4G, when the VNF momentum takes off with data center-based infrastructure that is shared among many services. Still using fixed service definitions, but quicker turn-up times, where we count months instead of years and scale in and out in minutes to accommodate the ever-changing needs of the users. So where we are today with the 5G rollouts, we end up in a distributed environment with even more flexible CNFs, container-based network functions, where services are dynamically assembled on demand. Today, the expectations are to be able to turn up services in hours and make changes and updates within minutes. This time journey is similar for other network domains as a physical domain, where we have the traditional use case of VPN provisioning, where everything started as physical dedicated infrastructure with manual provisioning, to the latest SD-WAN technologies, fully automated and fully virtualized solutions. Okay, so where are we then automating? Because I talked about different technologies in different time areas, but bear in mind, automation takes place everywhere. Wherever you have a network function and resources are deployed, automation is done. It is important that cross-domain orchestration is key to reap the full benefits of network automation. Automated networks include not only provisioning of the service, but also the end-to-end monitoring of the infrastructure and service instances. Final but not least, automation provides an abstracted infrastructure layer for service developers and owners, which means that you have one entry point for your service developers and anyone who would like to interact with your network management. Okay, so where is then NSO today? Talk about different technologies and where we automate. I hope that you remember that NSO is vendor agnostic. There was a very long time ago, like 5 years ago, when Cisco acquired Taylor, that the vendor agnostic concept would go away. I think the 170 device integration with our NED technology actually is a very good proof point that we continue on the device vendor agnostic path. So we typically add approximately one new NED per month. And this is a continuously growing catalog while our customer extend the usage of NSO. Our users, our customers, all the top 10 service providers around the globe, we're now also starting to see many of the larger enterprises using NSO, which we're very happy for, mainly in the financial institutions, as well as we see the growth in healthcare, public sector, and other enterprises. 200 customers plus, I think it's more than 200 today. It's a very growing number of customers, and we'll see probably even more when we go into the enterprise space. Also important to remember is it's not only our customers, Cisco customers, that use NSO, it's also Cisco ourselves. Many of our as a service offerings, such as WebEx or Umbrella, are using NSO to manage and orchestrate their infrastructure. And we also have our sister product, ConfD, which is the on-device management application, which is really the same kind of code base that we have in NSO. It's used on many of the device operating systems within Cisco as well as third party. And that's really a way for us to extend the reach of the NetConf Young standard interface, which I will talk about a little bit more later. So what does that mean? So I would like to iterate about how NSO is used in the automation journey. The NSO platform is used to automate any network function, and still remembering that there is an ongoing evolution of automation. We really know that migration takes time, and many customers will run in mixed mode for many years. And to help with the automation journey, the NSO team have also developed the network automation deployment model, where we focus on how to operationalize and set up a network automation organization. This model is really built upon experience from our customers that rolled out automation based on NSO. We do actually have a separate session about network automation deployment model. I really recommend you to listen into that. It's all about experience of using NSO for real in the field. So that's really the current status of NSO. Let's look into what's happening in 5.4, which is scheduled then for June timeframe, end of June, and we are on time, I would say, because we're pretty soon there. So a few highlights. We have the first off with the multi-factor authentication, many times called two-factor authentication, where we talk about this is really about adding the capabilities for authentication with third-party authentication systems. So we have our AAA engine that you typically integrate into authentication system. But now, given the increasing demand of more secure systems and secure environments, there was a requirement to actually be able to authenticate via your third-party application, such as Duo from Cisco, which means that when you log in on NSO using your user credentials, will actually be asked for yet another password or PIN generated out of band, so to say, and then you will be able to log in a more secure way. The implementation itself is really a set of open APIs that extend our AAA engine with challenge response capabilities. And in the 5.4 release, these capabilities are exposed in the web UI via JSON RPC, as well as when you log into the SSO, SSH, and the NSO CLI. Let's move on to the built-in alarm management application that will be available in 5.4. So we have a set of different applications that we continue to grow in NSO web UI. And here in 5.4, we have the capabilities for the system administrator to actually understand what's kind of in a graphical way to what kind of alarms are happening right now in NSO. It's very focused on the local NSO instance, and it helps you to do the usual suspect tasks, such as list the alarms by severity, understand what kind listing by status, and of course then also acknowledge the alarms and clear alarms. And this is really to give you a one-stop application to understand what's happening with your NSO. Simplified high availability. Of course, we've been around for quite a while with NSO. Most of our customers using HA. And for those of you who actually started to use it, you know about our external package called HEC, which is really an external package or application that's shipped with NSO that manage the HA status. In 5.3, our latest release that we released some time ago, we added some helper tooling to the HEC framework regarding state transitions and restoration of a HA failover. What's happening in 5.4 is actually we're moving in all the state management and operational management capabilities into NSO by extending the NSO core data model. The benefit of this is really that we are then now doing a prescriptive way of actually setting up your HA. We'll also be able to manage the HA transitions and states in the NSO CLI as well as in the various APIs. That being said, Virtual IP and BGP will still be delivered externally as a package because those capabilities and tool sets are not really part of NSO. It's shipped to NSO. You will still be able to use the same kind of functionality of HA as you used to do, but it's slightly different there, divided, even though it's much more simpler. For those of you who are worried about your current configuration, we will have the old capabilities in the product for a while, but it will be deprecated, so it will disappear in a few releases from now. Okay, so that was, let's move on to the final highlight about NSO 5.4, and that's about what we're doing with LSA. As you know, we use LSA typically for a large scale installation, but you can also use LSA to model your device population based on different services in a cross-domain model. We have quite a few customers using it, and we also see that they need to have an easy path forward to upgrade the entire LSA cluster. So in 5.4, you will actually be able to run an LSA cluster with a 5.4 in the top, and then you can have various combinations of 5x and actually 4.7 in the RFS layers. That means that you will be able to seamlessly or more easily in a phased approach upgrade your entire LSA setup. So that was actually the few different highlights of NSO 5.4 that are available here end of June. So what's happening next? What's happening in the future? So let's have a look about that, because we have a release in November timeframe called 5.5, but it's more interesting to understand what's happening in the market based on our customer base. So talked about large customers a little bit. We also understand that when we scale, we also need to improve our performance. I'll talk a little bit about what we think about the performance and what that means for us later. Another thing that's very important, usability. Usability is not only about the graphical user interface, it's the entire experience. We have different uses of NSO, such as the service developer. What is usability for a service developer? It's very much about tooling, about consistency with various APIs and also standardized interfaces. So we are investing very much there to actually give a consistent experience and also make it much easier to start to develop services as well as deploy those kind of services. The same goes for the network engineer that's typically used with CLI. So this makes it easier to actually start to use NSO, but it's also for you that also already have NSO in your organization. We're looking in then to make it easier to actually scale the competence regarding how to use NSO. Interoperability. I briefly mentioned the NetConf. Of course, we are very proud of our proprietary NED catalog, but we have really been pushing for standardized device management interfaces for quite a while, which is NetConf. Now it finally happens in the market. We see a lot of devices coming out now with NetConf interface. That means that we also need to step up and invest in interoperability actions. A few things that we've already done, which is very good to remember, is we have an NSO NetConf interoperability program, which is really driven by helping the market to make NetConf fly and make third-party other device vendors, not only Cisco, but other ones, to freely join, and they will actually get help to get their NetConf implementation properly verified, so it actually follows the RFCs. Of course, also we do participate in various interoperability programs. Last but not least, we talk about observability. What is really happening within NSO at any given point of time? We talk about three different pillars when we talk about observability. So logs, as many of the other things we talk about here is we do have those kind of capabilities already within NSO. That said, based on the customer feedback, we see how this will evolve. In the domain of observability, we also see the different momentums in the market, such as open telemetry, that we think might be a very good idea actually to align to. So when we talk about logs, today we have more than 15 different logs of different formats, and there we have the exercise actually now to look into what kind of formats going forward should we then support, and what kind of information should we then publish in the different logs. On top of that, we're also looking into how to be even better to actually have unique IDs that you can identify through the different logs. We already started that work with our audit log capabilities, but of course, everything can be improved. When it comes to metrics, the question is, how do I know what's going on within NSO? So metrics is a series of numerical values over time, like number of requests, CPU utilization, memory usage, or similar. But for NSO, what we're actually looking into in the beginning is the CDB logs. If the logs are taken or not taken, number of transactions waiting for the logs, or number of items in the commit queues. And that's something that we see. For those really need to be able to expose this, and also expose these kind of data in a way that external systems like Jaeger, Prometheus can consume. Final but not least in this topic is the traces, somewhat like log data, but with more metadata and structure. Trace is usually associated with a user request, like a user of a system makes a request, like a netconf edit config operation. Each trace has an identifier and it's further subdivided into spans, which is a concept from OpenTelemetry. But what I'm trying to say is we do have our traces in place today. What we will do is improve them, and also to align to external consumable models that are widely adopted in the market. So this is a very hot area. Really looking forward to the first iterations of this subject we'll see later on this year. Final but not least in our future is, I talked about performance. So then you might ask, isn't NSO performing? Well, if you look at this visualizations here, we start from the left hand. Typically where you start to use NSO is smaller environment, hundreds of the number of devices, you can count them in hundreds. The network engineer is starting to use the NSO as a power CLI or a network-wide CLI, which is very powerful and transaction-based, and then move on based on their growth of your device fleet, I would say. Then starting to have devices in the thousands, and then we have, there you actually start to use the capabilities templates within NSO. It's a very powerful construct that you can actually do code-free through orchestrations. That being said, when you go up to tens of thousands, you have the full capabilities of model-driven configuration, all the application tooling, how using Python or Java, and you're doing your young modeling. We talked about LSA already. That's already in place. We have customers that are running NSO with 80,000 devices in. That's where we are. But what we see is coming up is when we go for the 5G deployments and other kind of container network function-based deployments, where we have more than 100,000 of devices, high frequency of changes. They are virtualized, they are containers, they are very quick up and down based on the demand of new services. So there we're actually looking into how to extend the performance of NSO in this large scale without making a major change in your already known models of actually how to interact and develop your services. So it's more about adding capabilities into NSO to fine-tune and optimize your existing NSO installations, given that you actually already have your service applications in place. This is very good, of course, for large customers, and this will, of course, also be beneficial for all the different sizes of NSO deployments, which is very important to remember. It's not only about performance for the large scale, it's actually will be a tool set for all the different devices. But we start with our large scale deployments because that's where we see the need, the urgent need, I would say, as of today. That was actually the last thing about NSO update and the future. So now it's open for questions, and I actually have help with my dear colleague KJ Rosavik, who will help to answer all of your questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nils Petter. Very interesting presentation there about the features and roadmap. So we have some questions, and do keep asking questions on the app. The first question is, what 5.3 and 5.4 will deliver in case of performance and resources and footprint and memory management comparing with 4.7, for example?
Okay, very interesting question. And thanks, KJ, for helping out, and also when I'm running around to move around in my building here, since I have a broadband connection problem. Anyway, so 2 questions there, from 4.7 to 5.2. One thing about memory consumption is from 4.7 or 4x product line to 5x, there have been some significant optimization of how we actually manage the Yang model internally. To actually be able to reuse the Yang modeling space, and this is something that's really is done internal within NSO. So you, as a user of NSO, don't really see it. And the big outcome, of course, is you get a smaller memory footprint of NSO. That's one thing that's been improved from 4x to 5x, and then then for the performance, we do have. When we're looking into the virtual space where we have NFV deployments, and I know, KJ, you are really the product management expert on this, but at our large-scale deployments for virtualization, we have a few big customers that actually pushed us further beyond where we were before, where we improved our virtual network function lifecycle management to actually have a much quicker turn-up time for the VNFs themselves. So that's something that we actually seen pretty recent in both 5.3 and 5.4.
Yeah, and I think maybe one other thing we can mention there is what kind of working the other way is, since NSO 5.x has introduced the ability to have multiple versions of the same NED loaded in memory at the same time, that of course, if you do that, then you will have increased memory footprint because you're having multiple copies of the same NED, and that is one of the factors that drove the optimization of memory usage in 5.x. So next question then. You mentioned how, as an example, how the mobile industry has moved from 3G to 4G to 5G, and moved from physical devices to virtual devices, and then now to containerized or CNF-based systems. So how can NSO be used for managing virtual functions?
So one thing to remember, whatever is physical, virtual network functions or container-based network function, when we look into service orchestration, the use cases are still pretty unique to model the service. So from a functional point of view, that's one of the beauties of NSO. You use the same kind of concepts all over. That being said, when we're looking into the virtual space, we also have a complexity of managing the lifecycle of the VNFs themselves, where we then have our NFV core function pack, which implements the ETSI specifications. Together with our VNFM, Elastic Service Controller, we actually get you actually have a full stack for managing both the day 0 and day 1 management and lifecycle of the VNFs themselves, and then continue to orchestrate the dynamic services over time using NSO, as you already did in the physical.
Yeah, exactly, and we also have the We also have the move towards cloud native functions or containerized functions. And if you watched the recording from yesterday's session, Fredrik Jansson gave a fantastic presentation about the proof of concept work that has been going on in the 5G space, and we're also working towards productization of those orchestration functions. So that there is a lot of work going on both in the VNF and in the CNF space, which is all very, very exciting. So then on to the next question. You talked about observability, and I have been seeing a lot of questions from our customers in that space recently, where I guess our customers now are becoming more interested in looking at how do they know how the orchestration system is performing, and how they can measure and find out when it's running out of capacity, and how to optimize it. So, and one of the questions that keep coming up is related to Prometheus. That seems to be very interesting technology. So how will NSO integrate with Prometheus and systems like that?
So two things there. First and foremost, of course, we help our existing customers using our existing capabilities. But what I was talking about was really, this is a focus. We know that both, of course, the customer need to understand what's going on today, but moving forward, we are then aligning to open tracing, that's then going to open telemetry. That actually is then a standardized way of providing feedback to providing data into systems like Prometheus. So definitely that's where we're going, and we're also adding much more granularity to help our customers to actually understand what's happening in the core of the platform. This is typically something we will, of course, see in all our deployments, but then when we go into a large scale with the big ones, this is even more important. And of course, this is also important when you actually develop your own applications, so to actually be able to understand very easily, quick. So we actually package the functionality we have today into a more standardized data stream, as well as extending the state information, you could say, about the services itself.
Well, thank you. And you mentioned the large scale there, and I guess that was also a topic of your presentation. So, how do we deal with the very large deployments? But also, I guess, how do we deal with very small deployments? Well, how does NSO manage the span of requirements from very large to very small?
So I think that Grisha had an excellent presentation before this one about large-scale deployment and using LSA, etc., where we have different tool sets to actually scale to a massive 100,000 devices. That being said, bear in mind that typically for our service developers, we use NSO on your laptop, and that together with the capabilities of the NetSim, which is basically our NEDs, but they're reversed. You actually have the capability to develop your service on your laptop, deploy it in your lab with small sets, and then do the first production for a few hundred devices. And then you don't really have that much of hardware requirements or performance requirements on your installation itself. It's very lean and mean at the same time that it scales to these hundreds of thousands of devices. So we have both ends there.
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think it's very interesting or very important to emphasize that you don't need to jump to layered service applications. You don't need to jump to clustering. Get as much mileage as you can out of your single server deployment. First of all, by using stuff like the commit queues and the like. So thank you very much, Nils Petter.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nils Petter and KJ. I hate to break you in the middle of this interesting discussion, but keep asking questions on the chat,